Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello everyone, welcome back to Right on Track. Joining me today is a returning guest. Please welcome Yana. Hey.
Hi, great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you back. We are going to be chatting all about vulnerability today and also your new album, Journey of the Soul, and I'm very excited. So, what have you been up to this past year? I know you've been working really hard on your album, but anything else going on that you'd like to share?
Well, the album has been probably the main thing. I'd say I try to organize everything around that. So, you know it yourself, when you're doing a big project like that, you basically putting all your energy into it. So there's not much time for anything else, but you never know what pops up along the way. So that's how it is.
Perfect. Well, how was the whole album creation process for you? Before we dive into our chat, just, it's creating an album. It's a very long process, a very emotional process. So just overall for you, what was this experience like?
Oh my goodness, that's just, it still hasn't sunk in because I never thought I would get this far, in fact. So, now know that the whole thing is complete and it will be out very soon, it's just surreal. It's just, for a friend said to me recently that for an independent artist to complete a project like that is like a climbing a mountain. So, Mount Everest conquered, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, perfect analogy with climbing a mountain. That's exactly what it is. And especially, like you said, too, with independent artists, major label artists have so much backing to get them from, just starting to a full blown album. But for an independent artist who basically has to organize everything on their own with help from musicians and other people on the team, but it definitely takes a lot of work, a lot of energy, and you should be feeling super proud of yourself because not many people, get to do this. I mean, as songwriters and artists, not everybody has the resources or the ability to even release a single. And so going from someone who wanted to do an album to actually doing an album, those are two completely different things. So congratulations on your full project, and I can't wait for everybody to hear it. I got to get a listen ahead of time, and it's fantastic.
Thanks a million. I'm delighted, and I can't wait for the world to hear it. You're in for a treat, so
Yeah.
not long to go now.
So let's shift gears and dive into our quote for this episode, which is by Brené Brown. So can you read that?
Vulnerability is about showing up and being seen. It's tough to do that when we're terrified about what people might see or think.
This is super relatable. So when you were reading that, what thoughts were going through your head?
I suppose I'm seeing it from the artist perspective, and you know it yourself that as creative human beings, we're being vulnerable is part of the creative being, I suppose. It's, humans are vulnerable anyway, but I think the artists are even more than that. It's part of the process and part of putting ourselves out there.
I 100% agree with that. I think creative people are a special bunch, whether they be songwriters and artists or, any other creative art, painting, sculpting. There is a level of vulnerability that needs to be there because in order to create and be inspired and create art that others can relate to, at the heart of that is human emotion. And if we are holding back and not being authentically ourselves and being fearless to share how we're feeling about situations and how we, think about certain things, you can't be an artist without that. I think that, holding back on vulnerability, even though vulnerability is scary, holding back on it and not being truly open almost puts a shield up because you're creating music that isn't as raw as it could be. And so the music you're delivering to listeners, you're not getting the full impact that you could be sharing with them. And so I think vulnerability is really important just, in our day-to-day lives too. It allows for connections and empathy, and a big thing is trust. When you're fully open and, allow yourself to be seen by other people, you build a sense of trust and you start to be known on a deeper level. And I think as human beings, a big part of, being human is wanting to be seen and heard and accepted. And you can't have that unless you're fearless and you're vulnerable. So this quote is super, super important. And the one part of it that really jumped out at me when I first read it is showing up. I think that is super, super insightful because the first step to anything is to show up and do it. Just with songwriting and writing music. If you want to be a songwriter, you have to show up every day, work on your craft, and, try to grow and take chances and put music out there. And I think the same is true with vulnerability. If you're showing up and you're actively trying to be open and facing your fears, then that's the only way to go from staying in a shell to being open and sharing yourself with other people. So this is a fantastic quote.
I completely agree with that. Well, for me, what really resonated was the part of being afraid of what others might think about that once we're open ourselves to other people. Because I don't really think uh, you're really thinking about others at that point, because you're mainly doing it for yourself. So, you're. I don't really know how to put it into words, but it's just, different people might have different opinions, different thoughts, and it shouldn't be as big of your concern what other people might think, because whether they accept you for who you are, and then that these people are, so to speak, your people, and or they don't, and then you realize, well, so be it, and it's part of day-to-day life as well.
Yeah, I completely relate to that as well. And with songwriting, it's a unique situation because we need to remember music is subjective, and somebody's opinions on our songs and the things that we're singing about is not going to be for everyone. And something I needed to really get in my head when I started releasing music is if somebody doesn't like my song, that's not a reflection on me. It could just be, oh, they don't like pop music, or they don't like country music, or the message that I'm singing about, they can't relate to it. That doesn't mean that my voice and what I've been through, my experiences don't matter, and that nobody cares or anything like that. And so we need to remember that music is subjective, and when you're creating something as vulnerable as a piece of music, and especially a full project, like singles are one thing, but creating a full album or an EP, even, that's a collection of songs that the songs stand alone, but you're making a statement as a whole with the whole project. When you do something like that, you're really, really putting yourself out there. And we want people to receive our music well, but there's also that subjective nature of some people may not like it because it's not their, cup of tea, but that doesn't mean that our music is bad and what we have to say doesn't matter.
Well, you have to stand by your art. You have to be proud of what you created, because to quote one of my musician friends there, because once you let it out there, it's not yours anymore. In a sense of, anyone can relate to it in a different way based on their experiences. So once you're proud of it, that's what matters, and that's the most important thing there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to the vulnerability thing, everybody can relate from their own experiences. And the only way to achieve that is through being vulnerable and sharing your experience. Because going back to inspiration as well, if you are open and you share something rooted in an emotion or an experience you have that affected you on some deep level, others can think, hey, like maybe I should be open. Maybe I shouldn't be so afraid to talk about my experiences. And even if listeners aren't musicians themselves, they can still take, that inspiration and that comfort in knowing that there's power in opening up and sharing your stories, because at the same time as it being a little, fearful releasing these songs, it's almost like you're getting a weight lifted off your shoulders, because when I personally am writing about very deep things, it's almost like I'm overwhelmed by these emotions and these experiences. But after I put it in a song, there's relief that comes from that. But then releasing it too, it's like, I don't need to hide this anymore. I don't need to, hide behind a mask or put on a face or, try to shield a certain experience or emotion I've felt. And I think through releasing these songs and opening up, it allows us to kind of feel more free because we're not having to hide anything.
Yeah, you completely summed it up there. It's so true, but also once you get it out there, you're kind of you said it there. You're kind of not necessarily afraid of what people might take from it, but kind of somewhere in the back of your head thinking, well, now I let it out there, and whatever happens with it, hopefully it will resonate with whoever hears it.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So something I want to explore now is themes that we write about in our songs. And this is definitely something that comes out when you look at a full album. Your album definitely has certain themes that come out throughout the songs. And so this is another area of vulnerability, because the things we choose to sing about and write about and share stories about, that says a lot about who we are and the things we think about, the things that affect us. And so with Journey of the Soul, what are some themes you explore in this project, and why did you choose to sing about those themes in particular?
Well, there are various topics I tend to dive in, such as mental health. That's that's something that I feel it continues to resonate strongly, because I feel this is something that it's not being talked about as much as it should be. So the more you address that, the more you're sort of pushing people into thinking, hey, this is important. This is something worth exploring or you know diving into and talking about and spreading the word, spreading awareness and all that. Other than that, the teams are basically it's a bit basically about heroes and being proud of having them in your lives, and having the inspiration there, uh, honoring them in your art, uh, and so paying a tribute to them, so to speak. Also, I try to write a song that's slightly romantic, which is a huge step out of my comfort zone, because I don't really write songs like that. But in that case, I kind of thought it fits the whole concept of the album that I had in mind. And so one exception doesn't hurt anybody.
That's perfect. Well, something you just said that I think we can explore a little more is that you stepped out of your comfort zone to write a romantic song. And that is huge, because part of being vulnerable is stepping outside of our comfort zones. If we're always doing things that make us feel comfortable, then I think we're doing it wrong. Because, big thing about just living life in general and putting ourselves out there is, pushing our own boundaries and, taking chances and risks. And if we're constantly staying in this comfortable space, I think that restricts growth, both artistically and just on a personal level. And so I think you gaining the courage to do something that you're not really used to doing, not alone just writing the song, but releasing it as well. I think that's a huge step. And in general, with all the topics you spoke of that are on this album, it's really important that you're diving into things that are important to you, because that goes back to authenticity. You're writing about things that you find important and meaningful and you believe that need to be, shared about and talked about. And just spreading that awareness and being open and showing, hey, this is me. This is what's important in my life. And I'm putting it into song, and hopefully you can relate to it and see meaning in it as well.
This is so true. Well, going back to stepping out of the comfort zone there, it's so important not only for the creative mind but for as humans as well, because that's how you grow, that's how you learn in life. So you gotta do that, but it takes a bit of courage to do that, and I think not everybody has that.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely takes courage. And I think that's why it's really important to recognize an achievement as releasing music, releasing a full project that's so vulnerable, because not everybody has the courage or the strength to do something like this. I'm sure there are thousands and thousands of artists all around the world who have written songs and maybe have recordings of songs sitting on their phones, but they just can't gain the courage to share that. And I think gaining the courage to share that is really important. So the fact that you have done this, I've done this, all of the incredible albums out there in the world, those artists took a chance with their music and definitely experienced that growth, because like you just said, it's part of being human too. If we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and from a creative standpoint, if we keep writing the same songs over and over and over again, I personally would get bored, I think, if I wrote the same topic over and over again, and I wouldn't grow as a songwriter, I wouldn't grow as a person, and I think learning and growing and continuing to discover ourselves is really, really important.
Agreed. It's, as a not only as an artist but as a human being, you have to look around you and what's going on and kind of take whatever that is, good or bad, as a lesson and learn from it. That's also something you're not born with. You have to kind of learn as you go. We all learn as we go in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, 100%. So, another thing I wanted to talk to you about is something I noticed when I was listening to the album, and especially just from looking at the titles of the songs, you can get this as well. You tend to have a lot of storm imagery and ocean imagery with like the water, and just there's all these images that seem to be tied to storms and oceans and the water throughout the songs. And I love this because I personally love weather imagery and things like that in my own music, and tying to the different topics that you are singing about in these songs, these kind of images and titles that you're giving to these songs fit. So, what was your thought process? Was it a conscious decision to kind of go that route, or was that something that happened naturally? Or did you make a conscious choice to create music with these kind of titles and imagery?
As far as the titles are concerned, that was definitely a conscious decision. With the imagery, not as much. Depends on the songs, but with the likes of Calm Before the Storm or Man of the Sea, I totally had an exact idea what I want the song to be about. So it's strongly connected to the sea. Uh, I'd say calm before the storm is more as a metaphor than the sea as such. But in the case of Man of the Sea, that's definitely a real thing hidden in there, because it's inspired by a true story connected with the sea. So I couldn't have done anything else, even if I tried.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting how you mentioned how the one is more metaphorical and the one's based on, a specific story. And I think that's super interesting because there is a mix of in my music as well. I have metaphorical songs, I have songs that are more story driven, and going back to vulnerability as well, it's the way we choose to share these stories and these emotions. I think sometimes when you write very concrete, like straightforward storytelling, that really comes right out and tells who's ever listening, this is the story. This is exactly what happened. These are my emotions, and it's very crystal clear what exactly the songwriter, the artist singing it, has gone through and what they're trying to say. But on the flip side of that, the more metaphorical songs, you kind of have to dig a little bit deeper and, pick things apart and try to get what exactly are they trying to say. And I think the metaphorical songs, they leave more up for interpretation. And so when you're writing music, sometimes there's a conscious decision of, do I want this to come off more direct, or do I want to mask it a little bit with metaphorical language?
Well, I tend to write things that, as you said there, that you have to dig deeper into. It's not direct most of the time. So you have to read between the lines to find out what is it that I'm trying to say with these songs.
I love that. I love metaphorical language. And when you leave the door open for interpretation and, like you said, reading between the lines, I think that leaves a little more room for listeners to make their own interpretations based on their own experiences and emotions to see, what they need from that song and what they feel that song is about and how they can relate to it. Perfect. So another question I have for you is, releasing an album is a huge achievement, but at the end of the day, we all have this dream of listeners taking something away from it. And so if there's one thing that your listeners takes away from Journey of the Soul, what do you hope that is?
Well, that's a tricky one, but I hope people will look around themselves and look what on their lives a little bit more and realize what is it that is important in their lives and what matters to them. Because at the end of the day, life is short and our time here is limited. We never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So enjoy life when you can and enjoy it to the fullest, because once it's over you're gonna regret things that you didn't do instead of those you did. So I hope that these songs are gonna inspire listeners to enjoy whatever makes them happy in their lives.
Perfect. Not even going to elaborate on this. That's perfect. You said it perfectly. Great message for a project, especially a debut album. Super fantastic. So, along with the whole creative process, it's fantastic. It's fun, it's magical, but there are still challenges along the way that we have to overcome on a personal level and more external things that are out of our control. So, for you, what are some of the biggest obstacles you had to overcome during the creation of the album?
Basically the waiting part of, because I didn't have a chance to have all the musicians in the studio with me at the same time. So about half of the things were done remotely. So I did my bit in the studio, but then I send it over to whoever it was involved, and then comes the waiting part where uh, these people don't have just you on board, so you never know how long that's going to take. You're getting anxious and impatient and excited and all these things combined, because you're kind of wait to see what they come with for the particular song. But at the end of the day, you realize it's all worth it in the end, because you know why you chose the people you chose, why you want them on whatever song that is. So, and when it all comes together, it doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, absolutely. I completely relate to the whole waiting process. I tend to record my guitar and bass like with my guitars in the studio. There was a couple of times when he was in Nashville, he had to send his tracks from down there, but we like to record together. But when it comes to like the drums and I've been having pedal steel recorded on a couple of my songs recently, and during those instances, like I'm not actually at the studio when my drummer performs or when she records, I mean, I actually FaceTime into the session so I can hear what she's doing. But it's still that whole like waiting. Like I'm the same way. It's like I want to hear the song. I want it to be done. But I think the beauty of recording live instruments is it gives the songs a much more authentic sound. And because I'm in the pop space as well, I definitely do quite a lot of digitally produced songs. But anytime I can get live music, I play piano myself, but my other musicians, guitar, drums, I'm going to have flute on one of my songs on my new project that I'm flipping out about because I love flute, but it's kind of the same thing. Like I recorded that song, vocals are done, the piano's done, and my producer's going to mix it, and then we got to get flute. And I'm like sitting here like, oh, I wonder what the flute's going to sound like. I want to hear what the flute sounds like. But like you said there at the end too, it's all worth it. You know, we can be super impatient. We can want the song in our hands right now, but that's not how the creative process works. It needs time. And especially when there's other people involved, you need to give them time to create the parts they need to create on their instruments, and the producer time to mix it and get it to sound good. These things don't happen overnight. And so finding that patience and, you know, making time for all of those things to happen is really, really important. That's definitely part of the process. And when we get the final masters, it's a magical moment. And speaking of that, how did you feel when you finally got your entire album masters?
Well, that was absolutely unbelievable. Like I couldn't believe it
Yeah.
because it's been in the making for quite a while, and I knew where I was going, but to finally have it in my hands, or to know that it's this mine, this is the thing that I really, really, really wanted, is just priceless. I still feel like it's like a dream, you know. It's like
Yeah.
I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and somebody's gonna say, "Ah, you have been dreaming. It's not real. This is." So I probably will. It will probably sink in once the album is out there, because then it gets real. Because for now, it's just, okay, I have the CDs in my hand and all that. It still hasn't really dawned on me what I truly achieved. So uh, it needs time to sink in and process the whole thing, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely feels like a dream, super magical experience, and you should be feeling super proud of yourself for achieving this huge milestone of releasing an album. I hope everyone loves it. And just to wrap us up, fun question. It's a difficult one because I can't choose between my songs, but do you have a favorite on the album?
Oh my. Well, I love them all for a bunch of different reasons, but if I was cornered choosing just one, I'd go for the Traveler, probably.
Oh, wow, why? Is there a reason?
Yeah, definitely, because it's a deeply personal song, and it completes the circle why I do what I do and how I do it. Because it's not only an homage to the late Fergus O'Farrell, who was the frontman of the band called Interference, and they're like my heroes and biggest influences, and the reason why I do what I do and why I write songs that I write. But not only that, I'm joined on that track by Maurice Culligan, who's a keyboard player of Interference. So, and he also sings the lead on that one. So, uh, the circle is complete as far as I'm concerned. I'm just really, really, really grateful for the opportunity, because how often do you get to play with your heroes and create something so special like that?
Yeah. Sounds extremely magical. Well, everyone be sure to check out that one in particular. So, Yana, it was absolutely lovely having you on to chat all about vulnerability and your new album, Journey of the Soul. Before we go, just to tie things up with the whole vulnerability side of things, what is some advice you would like to share with any artists listening who are struggling to be vulnerable in their music?
Gosh, that's a difficult one. I'd say just do it. Just go for it. Just don't think about what you're trying to say or express too much. Just let the mind go free, because that's the best way to express even something that you have hidden in you. So that's the best thing you can do, and it hopefully you achieve the best result that way as well.
Perfect. Great advice. Well, Yana, it was lovely having you on. Please share with everyone where they can find you online and listen to your music.
Well, the best way to find me is on my website, which is yanamusic.eu, and there you find all the links to social media, all the info you might need, and everything that you might find interesting about me. So
Perfect. The beauty of having a website. Oh man. Well, it was awesome having you on. Congratulations again on the album release. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Yana all about vulnerability. And of course, until next time,
stay
stay
right
right
on
on
track.
track.